Hello and welcome everybody to my latest FreeCAD tutorial. This tutorial is targeted at a little bit more advanced users. It's not for the complete beginner. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you what I have learned in the last 4 years of FreeCAD practice. What are good techniques in FreeCAD to use to create clean and proper models without having too many issues with the so-called topological naming problem, and be able to create a little bit more advanced models. Like this bike fork that I have modeled here. You see it contains the fork here in blue and the shaft here in orange. And this is a little bit more complex model, and I'm going to show you from 0 to 100% how to model this fork. So the first thing we need to do in FreeCAD, we go to File, New, or we can choose this icon here to create a new document. Then we should make sure that we are in the Part Design workbench. You can see it here in the workbench selector, Part Design. And the next thing we want to make sure is to check the FreeCAD version. We click on Help and About FreeCAD, and you can see we are in 0.20.1, revision 29410. Windows 10 64-bit version. Okay, and after we made sure that we are in the correct FreeCAD version, we can start our model. I start by adding a create body and a new sketch. First tip for sketches, just use the predefined planes that you find in every FreeCAD document. It's the XZ, YZ, and XY plane. In this case, I want to use the XY plane because I want to have the top view for my first sketch. So XY plane, okay, and now happy sketching. I drag a little bit here to have a better understanding of what's going on. So like this. And then I press the middle mouse button and drag the drawing space a little bit to the corner of the bottom left here so that I have here more space to draw. I start with the polyline tool, which is my absolute favorite tool for creating sketches in FreeCAD. Polyline, and then I start here in the origin point. Next tip that I can give you, try to sketch as good as possible in scale. So I know the first line has to be 15 millimeters, so I try to sketch it about 15 millimeters like this. I don't draw the line and make it 100 millimeter long and change it afterwards to 15. This might crunch your sketch later, so try to draw in scale. So the next line has to be around 30 millimeters, so like this. Then we need an arc. We press the M button on the keyboard, M, another time and another time. So you see 3 times M equals an arc, and this arc has a radius of 20 millimeters. So try to make it as close to 20 as you can, like this. And M, M, M again. So we make the next radius that should be something like 60 millimeters. So like this. Not 100% perfect, but it's okay. So drag a little bit. You can drag even while using the polyline tool. Then create the next line. Go down and down here, and then go back to the left. So then M again to create the next arc. And to end your tool, just press the right mouse button and right mouse button again, and then you quit the tool, because the last line should be a straight line from here to here. So line from here to here, right click, and then we can use the trim command, trim edge, to trim these 2 edges here. So the first thing you do after you created your basic shape, you set the constraints, the geometric constraints first, and then you set your measurements and dimensions. So let's make sure that we have all the correct geometrical constraints. We select the horizontal constraint and see that this line has not been constrained horizontally yet, so we set it to horizontal, and this line as well. Then we check all the tangent constraints and the horizontal and vertical constraints first. So this is horizontal, this two, and this two. Vertical, it's this one and this one. So the last thing we need to check is the tangent. That's here, this command, constraint tangent. But we already have a tangent here, here, and also here. So it's absolutely fine. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we want to make sure that the center point of this arc here is constrained to the horizontal axis of my sketch. So I'm pressing right mouse button because I don't need to constrain the tangent, and then I drag this point here, and as you can see, the arc changes, and I have to use this command here, constrain point onto object, this point onto this object. Right mouse button. This center point is the center of this arc here, and this has to be vertical with this point. So these two center points of these two arcs should lay on a vertical line. So I can drag this a little bit around here or leave it here, it does not matter. I can select both of them, so both turn green, and then just dimension it or constrain it vertically. And now they are absolutely vertically constrained, and whenever I drag one, the other will go to the same spot. I'm finished now with the geometric constraints. The next thing that you do after the geometric constraints is the dimensions. So we set the dimensions, constraint vertical distance. This one here, 15 millimeters, as we stated. This one here is 10. The distance between these 2 points is 20. Then let's go to the constraint arc or circle tool. This is 30. This is 60. This one here is 20. And now we have 3 degrees of freedom left, so we need another few dimensions. We have a distance from here to here of 230 millimeters. So I pull it down a little bit so I can see it better. And we have a horizontal distance from here to here of 213 millimeters. And as you can see, there is only 1 degree of freedom left. I can now drag and drop a little bit to see what my constraints are that are still missing. And you can see that something here is not properly defined. So either this distance or this distance. And from my technical drawing, I see that this distance here has to be constrained to 30 millimeters. And now the sketch turns a different shape of green. And now I know that we are finished. I can close the sketch and go to the pad command next. Pad turns your 2D sketch into a 3D object, and I want it to be symmetric to the XY plane, the plane where I sketched on. So I click symmetric to plane, and then I have to insert the correct dimensions. It's 30 millimeters in this case, and okay. So let's click the origin here, click the space bar, and after clicking the space bar, you can see that this object is now symmetric to the XY plane. So the next thing we need to do, we have to add some features. Here on the fork, we have 3 pins, and in the front, we have a slot where we insert the bike wheel later. So when we check the finished product, you see this here is the slot that I was talking about, and these are the 3 pins here. So if we were in other CAD systems, I would recommend select this face, this body face here, but in FreeCAD, it's currently not advised to do that because of the so-called topo naming problem or topological naming problem, which can cause errors if you use faces of 3D bodies for your sketches. So we have to define a sketch plane manually. That's not so hard and makes the design a little bit more complicated and a little bit more time consuming, but it's worth the time because your models get instantly a lot more stable. So we insert a datum plane relative to the XZ plane and we offset it in Z direction minus 30 millimeters, so minus 30. And now it's perfectly positioned on this face here. This has one problem. If we change the basic geometry here in the first sketch, as you see, like we have now 30 millimeters, let's set it to, let's say 35 millimeters. Happens from time to time that you have to make changes to your model. And now you see the datum plane is no longer on this face here. It's floating a little bit in front of it, 5 millimeters to be exact. So yes, what can I advise you? I can advise you use the power of parameters. What does that mean? We go back to the sketch and give this 35 millimeters a name. You see it here below the 35 millimeters, you see name. We just say distance mid, distance underscore mid. I select it and copy it. Okay, close. And now we go back to the datum plane, the definition of the datum plane, where there is the minus 30 millimeters. We click here, the expression manager, and we click here. We leave the minus and now we enter sketch dot constraints completion. So constraints dot, and now just press insert the distance mid. So we see sketch dot constraints dot name of the parameter, which is distance mid. Okay, so that's it. We now have a plane that will always follow this face here, even when we make adjustments to the sketch. Let's switch it back to 30 millimeters. Bang, close. And as you can see, datum plane is still attached here. So this is a very stable way to model. We now have the datum plane here that we can use as a base for the next sketches, and we do not have to sketch on body faces. So I select this datum plane here and select new sketch. Create a new sketch. The next sketch is going to be a little bit more complicated, but as you will see, we make it step after step. So even a little bit more complicated sketch is no longer so threatening. So we start with the polyline, as you know, my favorite tool. We draw it somewhere here, up, right, down, down, and back here. So usually I would have to position this sketch, but when I look in my technical drawing, I see that there is no expression for the distance from here to the center of my sketch. So I have to use other expressions, and the position is defined relative to a edge. So let's select the datum plane and press the spacebar. In my technical drawing, it's positioned relative to this edge here. And it's not a good practice to use 3D body edges, but instead use sketch objects to reference. So we select the pad here, press spacebar, select the sketch, press spacebar, and now we have the sketch here, the first sketch. We go in the next sketch and turn a little bit around so that we can use the external geometry, select this point here, and now we have this point here linked into the new sketch, which we wanted to do. Now we can hide the sketch again and go back into the sketch, and now there is the point that I was talking about. We can constrain this line onto this point. So let's make some more adjustments. We know the height here, 15 millimeters, and the complete height here is 50. So the next thing, we have some kind of circle here, somewhere around here. And we have the circle position 32 millimeters and 15 millimeter in height. So that means that this point can be constrained onto the horizontal axis here. And now let's continue the sketch. The next thing we do is just draw two more lines, like here and here. And now let's make excessive use of the trim command, trim, 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 and trim, and trim. Here you can see now we are missing the tangent constraint between the circle and this line here. Okay. Next thing we do, we set a radius for this circle here. It's 7.5 millimeters. We set a parallel constraint between these two lines here. And then we use the fillet command and make a fillet here. And then we make a fillet here. So these two fillets are 2 millimeters, 2, and they are equal. Wow, I need to zoom in a little bit more, like here, and this fillet both 2 millimeters. So the next thing I can do is I can set an angle between here and this line, 50 degrees. And now I have a little problem because this line here is not correct. I was wrong when sketching because this line actually is an arc. So I delete it and go to the endpoint arc. I select this point and this point here and create an arc. So then I go to fillet and I put the fillet here and here. Now you see that the 50 millimeters height has been deleted, so I have to reset it again. 50 millimeters here, 5 millimeter arc, and equal. Then I will set my tangent constraint between these two objects here and the tangent constraint between these two objects here. And then I only have 4 degrees of freedom left. That's very nice because I have more information like this. And I have the angle between these two lines here of 45 millimeters. This point can also be constrained onto the horizontal axis here. And now I'm no longer missing much. I'm just missing the radius of this arc here, which is 15 millimeters. And then I'm already finished. I can close it, go to model, select the pad, press the spacebar so that I can see my geometry. Yeah, and now I can pad this sketch up. Pad is the wrong direction, so I have to click on reversed, 10 millimeters, and finish. So that was pretty easy, wasn't it? Okay, then we need to set the 3 pins here on top of the geometry. We again select the XZ plane, click on new sketch, zoom in a little bit and create half circles. We select the line tool, then we select the center and endpoints. Center somewhere here and endpoints are here. We know the size of this arc, which is 7.5. We know the vertical positioning, so between here and there it's 15 millimeters. All we do not know is the horizontal positioning, because the horizontal positioning has to be relative to the center point of this arc here. You see the problem? It's again a little bit more complicated. I have to hide the pad again, include the sketch here, and then I see the arc here. I go back into the sketch, turn out a little bit, and then I go to external geometry and put this geometry also in this sketch, close, hide this sketch, go back into the second sketch, and now I see the point here. You see it? Okay, so I now can drag this a little bit to the left or to the right, and then I set a distance between this and this point of 25 millimeters. So close, include the pad. So almost good, but I made one mistake. I put this sketch on the XY plane, which is not what I wanted to do, but I'm leaving this mistake in the video so that I can show you how you can deal with mistakes like that. I go to the datum plane here, make it visible using the spacebar, and then I select this sketch and go to support, click on the 3 dots here, and instead of the XZ plane, I select the datum plane and deselect the XZ plane so that only the datum plane is selected. Okay, and you see you have to make some update or refresh, and you see the sketch 2 has now the support on the datum plane. It's set back here on the yellow plane. Now I can pad it as well, 5 millimeters, also reversed that it goes in this other direction, and okay, clear. So I can use this pad now, go for the linear pattern and set it to 3 and the distance to 70. So that is the correct positioning. So, okay, now we are almost finished. We can now use the mirror command, mirror, and now we can use all things we have here. Okay. Not vertical sketch axis, but XZ plane. And then we get the error message, only additive and subtractive features can be transformed. So the linear pattern unfortunately does not work. That's bad, okay? So what else can we do now? We can remove this linear pattern, go back into the sketch, and we can use the pattern inside the sketch. So that means we select this object here, go to the rectangular array, make 3 columns, 1 row, okay, and click the Control key, go to the right, click, and now we have set this. All we have to change is this size to 35, close, and then you see inside the pad, now we have the 3 occurrences of this little pin. So now we can go back to the mirror command, select all the objects, okay, XZ plane, and we have mirrored the fork. So you have seen that only the additive and subtractive features can be used. You cannot use the linear pattern and then later mirror it. So that was another tip how to avoid mistakes in FreeCAD. So the last thing that's missing is the shaft here in the back. We can use the XZ plane for the last sketch and just draw with the polyline tool one last sketch somewhere around here, like here, down here, and back to the origin. So we have 12.5. We need some fillet between these 2 objects here. Radius of the fillet 10 millimeters. We need a distance of 5 millimeter here, and this one should be 15 millimeters. So, and the horizontal distance here 150. Let's close it. That's the basic sketch for the shaft. We can hide the origin here and then select sketch 3, rotate or revolute it around the horizontal sketch axis, and we finished the shaft. Okay, next thing we need to do is the fillets, and that's something I recommend you to use only at the end of your model, never in the middle of the modeling process. This can cause too many errors because these commands here are very, very easily to be affected by the topological naming. So now we can select these edges here. Damn, I cannot select this edge. What can I do? I can press V and 3 on the keyboard. So I get this different drawing style. And now I can select all the edges easily. Go to the fillet command, insert 5 millimeters. Okay, V1 to get back the other drawing style. And so you see the fillets have been created. Okay, then only 2 fillets are left. These are the fillets for these little pins here. So I select this edge, keep the control key pressed, fillet 2 millimeters. Okay. And then to make it easier for selection, V3 on the keyboard, this, and this. Wow, it's not so easy, right? Is it? Wow. Ooh. Yep. And fillet 2 millimeters. Okay. V1. Go for the isometric view. And I guess we are almost done with the construction. One thing I'd like to advise you, I have not really tidied up here my combo view. So you should give proper and meaningful names to all of your objects. Like the first pad, you could call it base fork, or the first thing, first sketch fork, sketch XY, and so on. So you can tidy up your combo view here, even when especially when the models that you are creating are getting more and more complicated. This is very helpful. So the next or the last thing I want to show you is how to adjust different colors to your object. You select the last feature here, the fillet 0.2, set colors, and then you can select these faces here with the control key pressed, and then select a nice color for these faces. One thing to keep in mind, that's why I said do it in the end of the construction and not between the construction. If you add another feature, let's say this line here, and create another chamfer here, you see all the nice color setting is gone again. That was it for today. I hope you liked my tips. I hope you found some of the tips helpful for your construction practice. Always save often. Oh, I didn't save. Nice. And then see you next time. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good time. Goodbye.